Hello, so today I'd like to talk about Daylight. Daylight made a lot of news and buzz because it's a procedural horror game, and even though the reviews weren't kind, I decided I would check it out anyway, for the good of science, or something. So, let's start with whether I think Daylight is worth playing, and the short answer is no. I didn't really enjoy it at all, and I didn't really find it scary or interesting in any way. So I guess it's just sort of like Slender, where you find a bunch of objects and you can't look at a ghost that appears randomly. And there's some little, I guess, jump scares, but they're sort of so cliche, it's hard to, I don't know, at least I never got jump scared, or I never felt tense at all. I was just kind of like, meh, moving through the world. But the actual gameplay is a bit frustrating because you have to find these objects and they're not super obvious, and you only have the light of your cell phone, which projects a very small amount of light, and I think the environment was probably nice looking, but it was hard to see because you either see it with the light of your cell phone, or you can launch a flare, which makes everything green and look greenish, or you can flare makes everything orangish, glow stick makes everything greenish, and so it's kind of hard to see and get any sort of takeaway from the environment. But I mean, I guess because it's procedural-ish. I mean, I wouldn't even say it has a sort of a very strong procedural, but and I could be wrong. But the way it works is that it sort of randomly positions rooms. Maybe I think I only died twice during the game, and both were frustrating. But I'll get back to that. But then I think it just moves them around a bit, but like, I had to really scratch my head and think, is this layout different than the previous layout? Like, think so. And then I guess the item locations are randomized, and the things you have to pick up are randomized. So, yeah, I mean, and this is something I've said several times when talking about procedural horror. I think it's much easier to balance tension and to, if you're composing a piece of music, which is sort of what I feel like, maintaining tension is like. There's a very careful balance between, spacing of the notes and the notes you're hitting. They haven't made a computer program that can play, compose good music. So I think it's similarly challenging, especially in horror. Which is not to say that I think procedural works in a lot of games, but I think horror, it's a big challenge to get it to be as tense, as interesting as a non-procedural game. So, well, I guess let me talk about when I died and how I found that frustrating. So, I played on easy. I don't know if that made any difference, but basically there's just like one ghost, and well, she's not really scary at all. And she has, just like flashlights for eyes and mouth. But like the thing is that it's not actually said, and it didn't really occur to me. Like, I thought she would, get me and viscerally kill me or something, and that would be sort of cool, sort of tense. But it seems like if you just look at her, she takes down hit points, and then they put weird thing on the screen, and then your viewing cone gets smaller. Basically, like, you can only see like this much of the screen, and then I'm just like, wait, I died? But I didn't know. I mean, I didn't quite know. I thought it was sort of like an insanity effect or something. I didn't realize that was actually the damage. I thought she had to come and grab me. But she doesn't. And just personally, I think that's kind of unfulfilling, is that, she doesn't come and do anything. Which, I guess is sort of easier to implement. You don't need an animation. I don't even know if she had an animation. She just was always like, ah. So, yeah, that wasn't really scary. And then, I don't know if this is the fault of the procedural or, just that things weren't tuned very well, but basically I found her, not very scary. Well, that's just what it is. But like, I actually found her annoying and irritating, because, like, basically once you got to a certain point, her frequency would increase. And so, like, she would just keep popping up and keep popping up, and I'm like, man, woman, stop nagging me. But then I realized that she actually is completely non-threatening, and you only have a limited supply of flares, so, like, at some point I'm like, oh no, maybe I ran out of flares, I don't know what to do about this woman. But then it turns out that basically, if you just don't look at her, then she can't hurt you, and so, like, she's supposed to, like, really chase you or whatever, when you find this special object. I don't know. Like, the plot and the story is insane. I guess I'll get to that in a minute, but like, basically I found that, you just keep running and she can't catch up to you. Maybe it's because I was playing on easy, but I mean, you don't have a lot of tools to avoid her, so I imagine a similar thing would work. But I mean, another reason that I think that the game sort of failed to hook me was that the story and the plot and the things you're doing in the game don't really make any sense. So it starts off, you're some lady and you're in, like, a mental hospital or whatever, and then you get these calls on your cell phone from this guy, and I have no idea what they were going for, but they're very comical in my mind, and he just says these random crazy things, and sometimes they don't even seem like linked to anything going on in the game. It's almost like it's just like a non sequitur. I wish I had written down the best or the worst of those lines, but I mean, it's really sort of a mood killer, and of course your character has amnesia, which is a pretty common thing in horror. And I think the one reason it works really well is because the player goes into the game not knowing anything, and so if the character doesn't know anything, then the player and the character are learning together. But I'm sort of, and we do something similar in Neverending Nightmares, but because I can't criticize it too much, but I certainly like our conceit that, you're in a nightmare and you don't know what reality is. And I think that is a bit more interesting and sort of gives us more room to play around. And I don't know, you discover notes about the mental hospital / prison / whatever. Honestly, I found them tediously dull. Like, I mean, some notes, they sort of build to the world and sort of hook you in more, but these I just was like, Like, at the end, I'm just kind of like, oh, I accidentally skipped a page. I mean, I guess the problem was it was just so cliche, like, oh, things are going bad at a mental hospital. That's not new to the horror, genre, and, oh, they're doing terrible experiments to prisoners or something. That's nothing new either, and then of course, you know, the guy randomly shouting weird things on the phone to you, and then your character says like the same lines over and over and over again. Really were sort of mood killers. But then again, I mean, there was really nothing. Well, I guess there was really nothing that they did, you know, that was special or interesting. I mean, the art was good, I guess, and technically it was, you know, pretty decent. Although I got 2 progression stoppers or 3 or something in the same place. I kept getting stuck, and I was almost about to quit the game and just like, you know, screw this, I'm not really enjoying this, and I can't even get the bugs out. But then I guess either I went a different route or the procedural generator was kinder to me, and I worked around the bug and I was able to get through the entire game. Which is really not much of an accomplishment because it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours long. And oh, the other thing that's kind of weird is the pacing is kind of bad because, like, you know, they have your segments where you collect these notes which, you know, tell you about the asylum. Ooh, spooky. And then you collect a sigil item, which I guess is supposed to reveal something more about things or something, but like, you pick up a teddy bear and then they flash a bunch of static images of stuff. I don't know. I guess maybe because I was so not invested in it, I didn't really put a lot of effort into figuring out what it was, but I mean, it didn't seem like it had much bearing on the story in general. And then basically that object counts as a key that opens the door to the next area, but they always alternate areas, so the next area will be completely different in that there's no monster chasing you at all. She just takes a smoke break, and then you collect more notes, but as near as I can figure, those notes are completely optional. And then there's like a small puzzle section where you have to like push crates. Like, push crates? Come on. I don't know. Just the idea of pushing crates in games, like, it's just been so overused. It's very difficult for me to, you know, feel good about pushing crates. It's just like, you know, there's a huge range of things in human interaction, and push crates is the one you pick. Like, so I guess there were some other ones that were slightly more interesting, but I mean, in general, the puzzle sections seemed like padding, like, oh, we have to make this game longer. I don't know, the game was weird. But, oh, the other thing I wanted to complain about is that it was kind of frustrating. I mean, basically you had a map, and you were always looking at it, although it was kind of small and hard to see what was making out, and you couldn't really see where you've been, because basically, like, if a hallway will end in a straight line, whether or not there's a dead end there. So, like, then you have to, like, backtrack and try and figure out, was that a real dead end, or, you know, did I just not load the next section of the map there? Or, I mean, like, one would think they could just do, you know, the 2 lines that open into a, you know, question mark or something. I mean, you don't need the question mark, but basically not show a dead end when there isn't a dead end. But I don't know, maybe that has something to do with the procedural. Anyway, this video is getting kind of long and rambly. But, I mean, I guess the takeaway is that Daylight, you know, doesn't work as a horror game. And, you know, I don't want to be, you know, say like, oh, it's terrible and you know, the developers did a bad job, because, I mean, it's tough making a game, and maybe things just didn't, you know, pan out in the end, or maybe things, you know, didn't, you know, just didn't seem very appealing to me, you know, a connoisseur of horror games, but, you know, maybe there's people out there who would enjoy it, but certainly it's not something I would recommend. So anyway, if you want my recommendation, I also got finally got Octodad Deadliest Catch this weekend, and I really loved it. So I would recommend picking that one up over Daylight. Although, I mean, certainly different genres. Anyway, have a nice day.